Hey everyone, welcome to That Rugby Union Show. And what a pleasure it is always to be with you and to have you join us. Looking forward to today. And if you haven't been with us before, do give us an immediate like, share, and subscribe because we're trying to build this community. And it's been quite a journey so far, some great conversations, and continue to do that here. So make sure that you do also comment during the course of the show. Love hearing from you, love fielding your questions as well, and any thoughts that you might have. Also, we are available on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and most podcast platforms as well. So just do a little search and you'll find us there. Also, because things just keep on happening here, welcoming viewers on Discover Sports. We are part of the brand new platform. It's a fantastic platform. It's an all sports platform. A wonderful opportunity to get up close and personal with, in particular, up and coming stars. A lot of content. We're on there and some live content there as well. But all that aside, today's show is one that I'm looking forward to, not only because I get a chance to catch up with my good friend Sim, and we're going to talk some rugby, and we've got a special guest as well. Sim, I can see though that you're not at home today. Are you stuck in the office, bro?
Yeah, I'm still at work. I still got a bit of writing to do. It is. I know everyone thinks a lot of the stuff I write is kind of like written with with a drink in hand. I know it probably reads that way, but actually it's real work, as you can see.
Yeah. I was saying earlier that you're the only one of us who looks like you've actually got a job and a full-time gig, which is fantastic. You give us gravitas, them. But today's guest is one that I'm really looking forward to chatting to. Fantastic guy. I got the chance to work with him for years, watched him play for years. He is a Rugby World Cup winner back in 2007 with that Jay White squad. An absolute pleasure to say what's up to Andrew David James. Butch, thanks for joining us.
How's it, Xola? Nice to chat and to see you again, and also to you, Sim. It's both of you been quite a while. I still want to see Sim's hands there just to make sure that there is no drink in hand. I'm somehow failing to believe him.
He could have put it down.
Yeah.
This is exactly what I thought.
Listen, my writing can't be that bad.
No, not all the time. In fact, we're going to do a little new feature as well towards the end of the show. That'll be very exciting, and we'll talk a little bit more about your writing. But Butchie, what an absolute pleasure, man! Always good to see you. You are hands down one of the best tourists I've ever traveled with. On the Springbok tours, and I think 2007 was particularly memorable. But it started at Maritzburg College for you, didn't it? And while we go back, I found out that you almost opted for cricket rather than rugby, and that even football was an option, wasn't it, when you were younger?
Yeah, obviously, my father was a football player, so I loved playing football or soccer. So, yeah, that was my first love growing up, up until I probably hit Maritzburg College. I think I went to Merkston Preparatory School. So, when I was there, I played Natal Junior schools. So I played the Junior Craven Week. And then, yeah, once I got to Maritzburg College, I really fell in love with rugby. Played throughout the A teams, going 14A, 15A, 16A. Then I started with my knees, did my knee. When I was under 17, when I was out for the year, I was actually in matric. So I did a post-matric because I was still young and only turning 18 the following year. And then I ended up started in the second team, ended up playing for first team for most of the year, but didn't play any representative rugby. And then I also was a cricket player, like you mentioned. So throughout the year, we were going on a end of year rugby tour to England, Ireland, and Wales. So throughout the year, we were raising funds and trying to get this tour on the go. So by the time the tour came, it was also the same time as the then Nuffield Week. So my coach at the time for cricket was also the Nuffield week's coach. And he phoned me the night before they were announcing the team, just asking me what I would want to do, if I would rather play cricket or if I wanted to still go on the rugby tour. And then I said to him, if I make the B team, I would rather go on the rugby tour. But if I've made the A team cricket, then I would play the cricket. And so he said to me on the phone that I was going to make the B team. And then I said, don't worry, I'm going to rather go on the rugby tour. And yeah, that's how it went. I went on the rugby tour. Colin Hurd was our first team coach. He was off to the Sharks the next year as one of the junior coaches. And that rugby tour that I went on, I played the best rugby of the whole year for myself, and well, probably the best rugby I played at high school. And my coach then said, no, you need to carry on playing. And I did that the next year, took the year off. I had no idea what to study. I lived in Maritzburg, drove 3 times a week to Durban to play for College Rovers, and I got seen by Swace the Brain. Whilst I was playing for Rovers, he pulled me into the under-21 setup, and yeah, I played in the Talent 21 first year out of school, and yes, from then on, I just was fortunate enough to take it step by step and eventually end up in the Springboks in 2001. That was a long story.
Yeah, no. Well, it was very, very short given the amount of time that you covered. And like, it's fascinating, the number of guys who had the option. I think it can't be an easy choice, because I look at somebody like you. I think Vic is a very good player. Jean de Villiers was a very good cricketer. There are a couple of guys who maybe could have, AB de Villiers could have gone the other way and gone rugby. And I imagine that you would have loved playing T20.
Yeah, I would have. I think if T20 was around in our day, maybe things could have been different. Who knows? But I really don't think I would have made it as a cricketer. Although I did play first team, I wasn't the best. My biggest claim is that I did bat above Kevin Peterson, who was then a spin bowler, and he became a superstar. So things do change. I think Skulk as well. Skulk, after school actually was, I think, contracted to play cricket, ended up playing a rugby game for varsity or something, and then ended up going the rugby way. So I think it would be, it must be tough decisions now. Obviously, Norton, who's playing for the SA Under-19s and also played at the SA Under-19 World Cup last year for cricket, I think he must have had a really tough decision. But we're seeing what's going on in the RPL. I don't know if he's made the right decision.
Yeah, and also it wasn't a great little run for the under-20s as well, or the junior Springboks in the past week. But hey, look, we need the talent of the likes of him. But Butchie, I'm fast forwarding through a number of years. You at the Sharks, or you in Natal, I suppose. And was it 1990 Currie Cup? Probably the one that I'd have to say you cemented your place in that squad.
Yeah, it
it's
was
not that old.
no, 1990
But
was the first year that we won.
2000. I'm thinking Ian McIntosh, man.
Yeah, I made my first. I got my first cap under Mr. Mack when in 1999 the Sharks were playing in those days the Purple People Eaters at home, and they rested a whole bunch of their superstars, the likes of Henry Honeyball, Andre Joubert, Gary Teichmann, and so I don't think Henry was even in the squad. So one of the other flyers were injured, so they were almost playing their third choice five. So I got called up to sit on the bench, which was really cool because Gary, Andre Joubert were all on the bench because they were being rested. In those days, you didn't really use 23 or 22, whatever it was. You would play with your 15 unless there were injuries. So they sat on there resting, and they were only going to go on if they got injured. But I got on the field for a couple of minutes, and that was my debut. And then in 2000, the Sharks had a poor Super Rugby campaign, and then Rudolf Straley came in midway after the Super Rugby and took over the team as head coach. And then we had a few trials, and we actually played whole bunch of us youngsters who were playing in those days for the Wildebeest in the Vodacom Cup. We made up a team that took on the Super Rugby team that was playing that season, and a few of us did nicely in the trials. So the game actually ended up all tie. They took a penalty in the last seconds of the game to tie it against all us youngsters. So that's probably where the break came with the Sharks and under Rudolph, and then we played the full 2000 Currie Cup.
Who are those guys? But was it? I mean, I'm thinking your age group, Craig Burden, maybe. I don't know who else. I'm trying to think of. I've already mixed up years.
Yes, yeah, you've mixed them up again. Bird is still a bit younger than me, but that's a compliment. I'll take that one. Yeah, it was like John Smith. I mean, John Barney was there in the Super Rugby squad already, but he was around. Eddie Kutsia, Sean Sowerby, Pete Marburg, Craig Davidson, Trevor Holstead, a whole bunch of us youngsters, Fricky Walsh. So, yeah, we had a nice young team. I think we were all round about 20, 21. So, yeah, it was a nice bunch of guys.
I got a great story to tell about Craig Davidson. Well, not necessarily great for him, just great for
Not
me,
the one
actually.
on
So, no. So when he was coming up and he was starting to play really well, I did a story for him. I was like a junior reporter. And I did a story for him, which the Sunday Times, I was still working in the Durban bureau, which basically meant I worked for the Metro and not the main paper. So I sent the story up to Joburg, and they read it, and like the then editor of the paper was like, "Geez, this guy's better. This guy's got something. We've got to get him." So I credit Craig Davidson for getting me employed at the Sunday Times at the time. But years later, retired. I'm in my 40s, and he was like just saying to his missus at the time, he says, this guy was the first guy to ever write a story about me. So I see the feeling is mutual. But yeah, listen, I've got to talk to you about box. Obviously, your first experience at the box was the whole tackling thing, which is all fun and games. But my favorite box story of you was when you got recalled again in 2006 after the Jaco van der Westhuizen disaster in 49-0 at Brisbane, the box play against the Aussies. And so if I remember right, you'd sort of platinum dyed your hair. And then you got the call up from Jake, and you're sitting there having just played the Stormers or Western Province or whatever it was, and you're thinking, I can't turn up looking like this. And then you try to dye your hair.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Jake he's an old school coach. He likes the black boots and not the long hair, just normal clean cut, short back and sides. Like the scrum cap must be a normal color, not all fancy colors. So yeah, I'd been from about 2002, I would say, all the way up until end of 2005. I'd been through a few knee issues and hadn't played a lot of rugby, and eventually came back 2006 and played 1 or 2 games of Currie Cup. But by then I put a little bit of highlights in my hair and thought I was looking pretty cool in Durban. And then I got the call up, and I knew that Jake wouldn't like the highlights, so I had to fly down to Cape Town to get all my kits sized and fetch my kits, because I'd been called up to get to Australia. And while I had a few hours to spare in Cape Town, I went to Cavendish, who walked into the first hair salon I could find, and just asked them to make my hair as naturally brown as it should be. And yeah, it ended up being a bit darker than it should have been, so it didn't work out too well. But yeah, at least the highlights we got.
And of course,
thank
Butchie,
goodness.
he had a reputation for hitting hard, in the tackle. And I've always been curious, the guys who can give it. What's the hardest you've been hit, and who was that?
Yeah, it's It's a good question because I much prefer to make the tackle than be tackled. That's why my hands were so quick, because I just didn't want to be on the receiving end. So I didn't actually get hit too hard. I mean, uh, I forget what there was one lion's wing. He was a tiny like man. I'm sure he was Daniels or something like that. But he was a tiny oak. He actually hit me one of the hardest I've been hit because I really thought I had him and I went in at full speed to try and bounce him. And he actually hit me hard. I mean, I remember getting a bit of whiplash and battling with my neck for a few weeks after that. But yeah, I think that I was also hit once. Jonah Loam, we were playing the Hurricanes at Kings Park and we had a 2-on-1 down the blind. I drew him and made the pass, but I made the pass pretty early so that I didn't get smoked. But he still like sort of body checked me, and just that little body check like winded me. He was really solid. So yeah, like I said, I didn't like being tackled, so I didn't have too many memories of getting smashed. But yeah, I'm sure if I had to go back and look at a few old videos, there would be plenty times that I do get smashed.
Yeah, did you like that? I mean, that was a part of your game that people obviously spoke about. But then when I think back at the 2007 World Cup, just getting that backline going, you had a very specific job. I mean, you had Free on your inside, Percy at the back. The kicking game came to the fore in that World Cup. But everybody always constantly talks about the physicality, talks about the tackling. Did you like that? Did you like that maybe you were that unassuming guy, maybe more expected to be on the beach than on the rugby field? And I know you've got a little bit of that red mist, but I know that you know how to get angry and step it up when you need to.
Yeah, but look, I'm very competitive, so I do like to win, and don't like the other team to get the upper hand. So I think I'm very chilled off the field. But once we all go onto the field, that something does come over you, and as a fly off, it's not ideal to have a little bit of that red mist. And yeah, I think you need to stay as calm as you can. You're the one guiding the ship there, making the calls, and making sure you're playing the right game plan. So I think I definitely matured as I got a bit older. I think from 2000 to 2005, I definitely was going on the field for the wrong reasons, to try to find that big hit instead of just waiting for it. You always find one in the game. So yeah, it took me a while to learn and to mature into the fluff that I should have been from the beginning. But yeah, then I mean, there was the big thing about the whole shoulder thing. It came up in 2000, and then in 2001 as well, and then. Look, it was always going to stay with me. I don't think it was too bad from 2001 until I retired. I made quite a few high tackles, especially near the end of my career when I wasn't as agile as I should have been. But yeah, I think the shoulder thing, it will always be with me. But I think it was pretty bad. Well, it was at its peak 2000, 2001, and I really think that it did get a little bit better. And yeah, I even had some refs they give me a yellow card, and then on the Monday, they would phone my coach and apologize for the yellow card, saying that they got it wrong. But it didn't really help the whole reputation, and you can't take the yellow card away. Talk for the 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another day. Reputations. I think Bucky's had a reputation that maybe saw him get a number of yellow cards he probably didn't deserve. There are a couple of others as well. All in the Game Center question here. In place of the traditional tour, they ask, will there ever be a 3-match test series between British and Irish Lions and combined New Zealand SA Oz team with warm-up matches? I don't think so, to answer your question. We're just not part of the Anzac nations, although there has been quite a relationship over the past few years. Unless any of you two guys think any differently, I don't see South Africa being part of a combined Southern Hemisphere Lions equivalent.
No, I can't see it happening. I think the closest you'll get to that would probably be a Barbarians team where you might get a coach that wants to pick as as close to a Southern Hemisphere team as he would like. You know, I think we've seen it a few times where the Barbarians are covered with Australians, New Zealanders, and South Africans. But yeah, I don't think we'd ever get to something like the Lions.
Right. Well, talking about the Lions, we in fact are going to touch on what they have planned for the Australians. But very quickly, let's start here at home with the URC. And you know, we tend to remember you from your playing days in Durban. You obviously spent some time in Bath. You spent some time at the Emirates Lions in Johannesburg as well. And it must make you feel not that great to see how the Lions have gone, because you can see the talent, you can see the endeavor. What's gone wrong?
Yeah, it's a strange one. I think they've played pretty well at home. Actually, I think they've had some good games there, and probably like most of our South African teams, they've been inconsistent. I think all our teams have been inconsistent, but especially the Lions. You know, one weekend you see them play and you think, oh, that maybe this is the turning point for them, and then the next weekend they don't play so well. So yeah, I think away from home they really haven't been good, and I think that probably comes down to experience. They do have one or two experienced guys in their team, but not a hell of a lot, and also the players maybe that they've got there. You know, they've got a whole bunch of brilliant youngsters, and I think if you get 3 or 4 injuries there at the Lions, then they are scrambling. You know, so. I do feel for them. I love the way they play. When they do get going at Ellis Park, they are quite a joy to watch.
Yeah, they really are. They construct the really good tries. They've got cult heroes in the pack as well as out wide, but it just doesn't seem to be coming together at the moment. And also, Butchie, this is a problem that the Lions have, that similar to the Cheetahs, I suppose, can't necessarily keep all your top players. Pumas in the same boat.
Nah, that's 100%. I was just about to say it when you said the players out wide. I immediately thought of Edward van der Merwe, and yeah, I think for the Lions, as soon as you start playing half decent, exactly like you said, like the Cheetahs, as soon as you start playing half decent, someone's going to snatch you up. So yeah, it can't be easy. You almost build a team, and then the next year it's like being a first team coach at school. You know, you build the team up, and then next year you have to start all over again. So that can't be easy either.
Yeah, no, I think
Sorry, X. Just looking at the Lions, obviously they're the only South African team. They've got that stigma of the only South African team never to win, or never to be in the quarterfinals. When you look at it, is there a pattern, and how do you fix it?
Yeah, I think for me it would just be to try and keep this group together for 3 or 4 years. I think they've got some wonderful players there, but they just need to get that experience and play together for a bit. You know, I think Xabanisa, the prop, I think he's a wonderful player. Ruan Venter, yeah, I think the Marburg, the scrum half, they all great players, and yeah, I just think Henko van Wyk in that 13 is world class. Yeah, they've got such good players. I think they just need to keep building on it. Maybe get 1 or 2 more players in, but and then you'd see them performing. I think we saw it with the Lions back under Johan Ackerman, John Mitchell. They kept those youngsters for a while, and then they eventually came good, you know. And so that's just the challenge there. Like we mentioned, you build up a player like a Henko van Wyk or Edwell, and then next minute they get taken away from you. So I think that's probably the challenge. Try to keep that group together for 3 or 4 years, and then you could start seeing results. Unfortunately, there's no quick fix, you know.
Yeah, then the coaching team obviously is under immense amount of pressure, but it's a talented but very young coaching team as well. Do you think maybe an injection of an old head somewhere in the midst? And I don't mean it in a bad way, but you know, Jacques Fourie, great guy, I'm sure phenomenal. I don't know if we've lost you, Butchie, or if we've just lost your picture. Can you hear me? Wilson?
Yeah, sorry, man.
Oh,
Bloody Jackie Creel's back from Japan, so He's trying to hook up, so that was it's trying to phone me. He's going to probably phone back again. So if I cut out again, sorry, I'll just block him.
No, it's all good. Don't block him. Don't block him. But yeah, the coaching situation. I think really talented guys, but a very young coaching team. Do you think maybe just the injection of an old head would make a little bit of difference? Julian Reading is great guy. Still very young.
Yeah, a very inexperienced coaching team. I think obviously led up by Cash, who's been around for a long time, but not as a coach. He's only been coaching for a few years. Jacques Fourie, Julian, like you mentioned, Byron Peterson, I think he's doing their lineouts, and he's actually been around for quite some time. And there's nothing wrong with their lineouts. I mean, he's a genius when it comes to lineouts as well. So, yeah, I think just as a group, a very young coaching group, and who knows? I just always think when people start talking about the coaches and wanting to get rid of coaches, the first thing is who are you going to replace them with? I don't think there are a lot of coaches around, especially South African coaches. So yeah, again, similar to the players. Sometimes you just have to go through a tough time, and then just hope that the coaches are the right ones, and they will also come good, just like the players will.
Yeah, well, let's move on to the fly-off conversation because, yeah, I think you speak about a young Lions team, and hopefully they stay together, and maybe similar could be said for the coaching squad, a couple of seasons together, understanding the challenges of a team like the Lions and the losing of players, constant churn and that sort of thing. And who knows, maybe just being settled is what is going to make the difference. But there's been a lot of chat about fly-half competition for Springbok places as well this year. Sasha Feinberg-Mngomezulu obviously leading the way at the moment, just in terms of being spoken about. We almost forget that we've still got Andre Pollard. We almost forget that we've still got Amani Libbok, who might be leaving the stallers. There's Jaden Hendricks in that picture there. Sia Masuku's done incredibly well. What do you make of the competition? And obviously, the big talk is that you can't just have one or two guys. You need a lot of depth. What do you think Russie's looking at? Would he be happy with what he's got for selection?
Yeah, I think he'll be happy. I think last year was probably the strongest that had ever been at 10. For a long time, if not ever. I think all those guys you've just mentioned were all playing really nicely. The one or two of them had dropped off slightly, probably from a lack of game time. But yeah, there's no doubt that Sasha's leading the way at the moment, and we've still got Andre, who will be coming back now to the Bulls, and we know exactly what he offers us as well. So I think they're two very different fly-halves. I think Sasha's just a wonderful rugby player. I mean, there's nothing that he can't do. He does everything really exceptionally well. So he's really good. I think maybe just needs to keep the showboating down a little bit, but I think that's what everyone goes to watch. I think he's a player that when you go to the stadium, you just hope that he is on the field and doing all those magical things that he can do. So for me, it's number one would be Sasha, and Andre number two, and then I think Mani was always number 3 for me, but I haven't seen him play for a while, so it'd be interesting to see him on the field again. But like you said, I felt sorry for a guy like Sia Masuku. I think he was playing so nicely for the Sharks. Then Jaden came across from the Lions and started playing at number 10. So Sia took a bit of a back seat and probably lost a bit of his form because of game time as well. So yeah, I think he's the player that's probably missed out a little bit. And he was playing really nicely at one stage.
But
Yeah,
you're
no, I
just
absolutely
looking at but you're just looking at Sasha, looking at his skill set. Is there anyone in particular that that he reminds you of? And I mean, you've already spoken a bit about showboating. Do you look at him? You know, do you listen to the Dan Carter talk and get a bit worried as a result as well?
No, not really. Look, I think he's more of a Collar Spencer player to me. I would say. I
Well,
think he got that extra little bit of flair. You know, like, I'm not taking anything away from Carter. I think he was very, very well rounded, but he's just got that little bit extra. Sasha, I feel. I think he's the skill level and some of the stuff he does is just, you just wonder how he's even done that. And I think that's what someone like Carlos was similar to that. So when I talk about the showboating, it's more like when there's a 2-on-1 and you just need to pass to the guy, or and he tries the backhand pass, or when the ball's coming to him, he tries to catch it one hand. Those sort of things that he probably, when he's practicing, he does that all the time because he's just so naturally gifted, and it's easy for him. So, but sometimes in a test match, you do one of those, you make a mistake, and it could end up costing you the game. So, I wouldn't want him. I wouldn't want to take all of that away from him because, like I said, I mean, the reason I like to watch him is because you just don't know what he's going to do next, and when he does do it, you're going to fall off your chair, you know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely exciting to watch. But maybe that's one of the things that the Stormers have to contend with, is that balance, because you've got Damian Willemse doing something similar as well in the same team, and I wonder if that isn't a little difficult for a coach like Dobbo. You know, like yes, guys, we want to see the flair and the skill, but not all of us at once at the same time all the time.
No, and then the ball goes to the back to Warwick Galant, and then he
Yeah.
doesn't even know what he's
Yeah.
going. So yeah, it's definitely. I think that's why Dobbo's got no hair. Those three have made them lose or pull out all his hair. I think that.
Yeah.
As sometimes when you're watching them, you just like, what are you doing? You shouldn't be doing that. And sometimes it comes off, but sometimes Dobbo does go crazy there. But I think that's what I like about Dobbo as well. You know, he's probably gone out to them and said, play what you see and what you want. I'll judge you in the video session, you know, but have a go. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, in fairness, Dobbo forwent his hair a couple of years ago. I think a good 20 years ago now. Yeah, no, it's been a minute. But also, things are different. And I think a lot of people maybe don't understand how tough that jump up is from, say, playing Super or URC to Test rugby. And it's very unforgiving. Is there a big jump? Did you notice a big jump, or did you sort of take it in your stride, understanding that, yes, it will be more intense, but you can create the time on the board. You can, think about the games and the moves in advance. Or is it just so fast and frenetic that adapting takes longer?
Yeah, I think, when I was with the Springboks, I was obviously playing Super Rugby, and I thought the jump up from Super Rugby to test matches was massive. I think it's way bigger. Everything's quicker. Everything's harder. There's no gaps to find and get into a gap or put another player into a gap is really, really tough. And also every single mistake is just magnified. So the error rate has to be almost zero to make sure that you don't get any points scored against you. So I think test match for me is just on a next level, and I'm sure it's the same as the URC, going from URC up to a test match. I'd say, like, if you're playing in the final of URC, it would be just below. So not that big a difference, but it would be similar, where you can't make mistakes. The defense is going to be on it. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, it also explains why Rassie was as pissed off as he was that Sasha hid that injury. You don't want to, as a young player, also get off on the wrong foot, Is that something that you saw happen? I know I saw it a couple of times. I won't mention who, but players do sometimes not tell the coach that, look, I've got a little niggle here, I've got a little something in my leg, because you want to play as much as possible. You want that game plan.
Yeah, I think playing for your country and and also playing a test match is just like the best thing in the world, So for a youngster that's just gotten his breakthrough and in those big lights and having the best time of his life to be to think like, I've got a bit of a nickel, but I'm sure if I just strap it tight or whatever, I'll be fine, So look, I think you always need to. It's one thing with the Springboks. You always need to put the team first, and I think when you are battling or think that it could influence the way you play, be it you could be 1 meter too slow to make a tackle or to make a pass, then it's going to be better to put the guy behind you in your place. But it's easier said than done. You feel like you've just gotten that jersey on your back, and now you want to almost give the other guy his chance again to cement his spot. So I'm sure it's tough, but yeah, I would always say put the team first.
Would you just looking at this whole sort of flyer situation for for the Boks, it does seem like, I mean, looking at how quickly Rassie sort of roped Sacha in as soon as he was fit, it does seem like he's the anointed guy to to take the team to the next World Cup. But when you look at the other guys that are in the supporting cast, your Sia Masuku's, your Jordan Hendrickses, Mani Libbok, and Andre Pollard, which guy do you look at him as kind of like his his opposition or his competition, because he needs that competition sort of from within the box to be able to keep getting better until 2027.
Yeah, I would say the only competition for him, in my opinion, would probably be Andre. I think we saw it at the last World Cup when Mani was the number one, and unfortunately he missed one or two kicks in that World Cup and then Andre came on and didn't miss a kick, and then it was in the playoffs. You have to win. You're going to need to win by, like we saw, by 1 point, and those kicks are going to be really important. So I think someone like Andre is so cool, calm, experienced, and has a proven track record that when he's under the pump, he produces. I think you're always going to need someone like that, and especially at test match level, and then one step further at World Cup level. So for me, it would probably be Andre. But when you compare apples with apples, someone like a Sasha, I think there's one player would be Mani. I mean, if we're going to compare the way they play, the skills, the way they attack, run the ball, get their backlines going, I would say Mani.
But you also saw the announcement of the British and Irish Lions squad just last week, and they've got a couple of very interesting options around Flyhalf, and I'm quite interested in what Farrell is going to be able to do with the team that looks as exciting, ball in hand, as we've ever seen from a Lions squad. And I think that the two Finns, Russell and Smith, incredibly exciting. And then obviously there's Marcus Smith as well, who was in and out of that English starting lineup. But we know the impact he can make. Who do you think out of those three would be the go-to? I mean, in terms of age and experience, obviously Finn Russell, but, do the other guys have a chance of being ahead of in the queue when it comes to the test selections?
Yeah, I think to start, I would say that it's going to be between the two Finns, Finn Russell and Finn Smith. To start, I think Marcus Smith is really, really exciting, similar to a Sasha that can score a try from his own 22 or produce something magical. So for me, I would like to see him, if I was the coach, I would like Marcus on the bench to bring on with 20, 25, 30 minutes to go. It depends how the game is going, and just to create something magical, So he would be my bench guy. And then to start, I would choose between the Finns, and my choice would be Finn Russell.
Yeah, that's a very talented player. But we're going to let you go.
But if I was the Aussie coach, I would. Sorry, if I was the Aussie coach, I'd be pretty happy playing against all three, and I mean that would be my that would be my go-to channel where I'd be making sure I attack and try to get my go forward and momentum. I think all three of them could maybe be a little bit vulnerable in that channel.
Defensively. Yeah.
Which he's managed to praise them and pan them in one sentence
At the
just
same
about,
time.
you know, it's like,
Yeah.
great
I
guys, but
I
that's
love
where
that.
the points are coming from.
Well, since you mentioned them, I have to ask now about Joe Schmidt making the suggestion that James O'Connor could make it back into that Australian squad, and we haven't seen them select overseas-based players since, sort of was it the Guinea rule? That will be interesting. He's, I think, 30. What age did we say he was? 35. He's not a young man anymore, but he is playing for the 34. He is playing for the Crusaders, and he's playing very well.
Yeah, he is, and I think the reason they're probably thinking about bringing him back is that there hasn't really been another 10 that's really put his hand up and said, "Look, I'm going to be the guy to take on the Lions," So I think that's probably been their dilemma, that they don't really have that 10 that can help them out. I think it is a really important position. So I think for them, they would have to really consider it. And I don't know if he is the option or the right option, but I think they're just in a tough spot there when it comes to 10s.
Yeah, you would say it's an important position. I didn't expect anything different from you, Andrew. Thank you very much. Listen, I know you've got a lot to do. You were saving lives earlier. You've got to do the dad thing. What is it? 3 boys. How old are they now?
They are 12, 9, and 5.
Yeah.
They're
In other
busy.
words, busy. Yeah. And I don't want your missus to not like me anymore. So do send her regards. Look after them kids. And Butchie, appreciate you, man. Hopefully we'll get a chat soon.
No, it was good to chat to both of you guys again. And hopefully get to see you soon. And I'll come there, pop into the office, and we can have a beer together there.
They'll be finished. They'll be finished by the time you get there, brother. But no, thanks, Butchie. Hopefully run into you the next time I'm in Durbs as well.
That'll be awesome. Cheers, guys.
Ciao.
Yes.
Thanks very much to Butchie there. And I mean, we did have to let him go because he is a busy man. But good to see him. I think the one thing I liked about Butch is that he was definitely not the quintessential South African fly half. He wasn't typical by any stretch of the imagination. There was something very different about those Durban boys. And yes, I know I mentioned 1990, but I was sort of taking it from the Banana Boys Macintosh era into what we saw with Butchie and the team that ultimately lost the Super Rugby final against the Bulls. He did things differently, and I think the irony for me is that we look at a Sasha now and we exalt the fact that he is different.
Yeah, look, the thing about Butchie was he was probably like a lot of contradictions as a player. So when you look at the fact that he's quite a laid back guy, as you can see just from this interview, he's a very laid back guy off the field. But he obviously had white line fever, and became a totally different animal when he got onto the field. And then you look at his game as well; it was also a lot of the same. He had that reputation for he's a hard hitting fly half. Maybe coming in after Henry Honeyball, it was a bit difficult to not be a big hitting fly half at the Sharks, and so he had that reputation for. No, it wasn't just for a big hitting fly half, maybe a dirty fly half even in terms of those hits. But actually, he was a very skillful player. He could put the back line away. We talk about when we talk about the 2007 World Cup. Obviously that the big highlight there was Brian Abana, his speed, his tries that he scored. Matching Jonah Lomu in one tournament with 8 tries. And the other talking point obviously was Farid Priya, the scrum half who basically runs the game, and he does an awful lot of the kicking. Percy Montgomery was doing the kicking for posts. I think Butchie, in a strange way, almost went missing there because the fly half is supposed to be the guy, that runs the show. But essentially what happened, I think he went missing. If you want to go back to the 2007 World Cup, that quarterfinal against Fiji, where we are really under the pump. We got 20 minutes to go, and it needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. What
Yeah.
Butchie did tactically, in terms of just driving them back with the boot and playing a boring game, it was exactly what your Flyhalf needed to do, and he did exactly that. And it went missing again amidst all of what was happening around. JP Peterson's try-saving tackle, and I can't remember who scored. It might have been John Smith or whoever else. But that was the thing about Butchie. He was sort of like almost like a whole host of sort of contradictions in one. And I'm very happy that he was recognized enough to obviously not only go to a World Cup but to actually win it as well.
Yeah, no, he really did so well, and like you say, fits the mold, and taking the kicking responsibility away from him as well, proved to be a master stroke at the end of the day. And I think early on in his career, maybe would have disrupted him mentally, but to understand that role so clearly and have it defined, I think was crucial for the 2007 World Class winning squad. I see a couple of messages, and Jono, I'm definitely going to get to you in a little bit because I think it's very interesting, and we'll touch on that Springbok alignment squad. But first, before we do that, today was also a really sad day for South African rugby. I wake up at 4 o'clock every morning to go in and do radio, and this was the first story I was met with because it happened overnight. Cornal Hendricks, one of the nice guys, and I mean that sincerely, our Springbok rugby passing away. And we know that he had heart-related issues a couple of years ago that forced him off the rugby field. He came back really showing that he is lion-hearted, because a lot of players would have called it quits. I think that was in 2016 we first found out he's got 2015 we found out he had that heart issue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
look,
no, very,
it's you know what caught me with that story when I saw it also quite early this morning. I was 37 years old. That's how old he was. You know, geez, you got guys like me pushing 50 and just literally basically just thinking the place up, not particularly adding, insanely great value. But here we are still. And then you get a guy like that who seems to have touched absolutely everybody that, he met throughout not only his career, but throughout his life as well. And, it's one of the things you look at, him dying at 37, but by the same token, you imagine, and I know this is called comfort for his family. You also imagine that um, even though he died young, he died a fulfilled man simply because obviously, he went through the whole rigmarole of he played for Boland, played for the Blitzboks, played for the Cheetahs, and suddenly, got into the box setup. And just when the world was at his feet, it was all snatched away because of this heart condition diagnosis. And now suddenly he can't play the game. And he was supposed to play for he was talked about to sign for the Stormers at the time. And then what happens next is Toulon were interested, and they were the richest, they were the Toulouse of the time, back then. They were interested, but they got scared off by the diagnosis, and he wanted to sort of go and get, and prove himself to anyone. He kept on going for a second, third opinion in terms of, the doctors that kept looking at him. He just wouldn't take no for an answer. And 4 years later, he actually got his dream back. He got to play the game again. And, he got another 5 years that he got to carry on playing the game for. So that's why I say, in a strange way, he would have been fulfilled. Even though obviously, I mean, he leaves 3 very young kids. I think the eldest is 6 and the youngest is still a few months old. And, that's incredibly young. And those kids, you've got to feel for them. They are now going to have to go through life, without a figure that they probably need in terms of his attitude to life, how he's, his sort of philosophy, not giving up, the kind of person he was. Apparently, he brightened every room he walked into. He was always the guy to make a joke. Brendan Nell, I spoke to Brendan, Brendan, and he was talking about, how when he joined the Bulls and basically played, I think he played his first sort of game. It was like a trial game just to check how the ticker was. And then he comes off the field and Brendan and him are talking and, just how do you feel? How did it go? That kind of thing. And then, he pulls Brendan back as Brendan's walking away. He says, so Brendan, do you think I have the heart for it? So he was that kind of guy, he always made,
Yeah.
he always made he always made jokes about this whole thing. And, to lose the guy like that, he was the heart and the soul of Edgar Rathbone said he was the heart and the soul of the Bulls. And the guys were gutted
Yeah.
today. They didn't even, they came in for training, but they only did light training and just allow the guys to go home and sort of grieve, take it all in. And so look, it's very sad, especially when you think of his missus and obviously the three very young kids who haven't had a chance to properly experience them, are going to be missing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's incredibly sad because, as you say, one of the more generous guys, sometimes when you come in from a media perspective into a team, sometimes rugby players and especially coaches will want to keep their distance. They won't want to give too much information away. And maybe, it's because they do get overburdened, but he always gave the time of day and not just gave the time of day, but was just a very pleasant person to deal with. Thanks, Jonah, for your comment there, all in the game as well. Just reflecting on, Cornal Hendricks and what a phenomenal guy he was. I know we're getting towards the end of the show, Sim, and I did mention that there might be a new feature this week because you are always in the office, you're always busy, you're always writing, you're always looking for stories, and I love picking your mind and wanting to know what it is you've been thinking about. So this is the Simbin. Booing is all the coaches.
Yeah,
Like, oh gosh, what's he got to say now?
I think those views are right there. So I don't know if obviously we all watched rugby over the weekend, and I did the Bulls game on Saturday, and Bulls against Cardiff, and looking at the team, we've all heard of the 6-2 split, the bomb squad, and we've all heard of the 7-1 split, which is it's nuke squad cousin, if you want to call it that. But I'd never heard of 14-1 split, 14 being white players and one being one black winger in the starting lineup. I swear, looking at the team run out, I thought, hang on, wait, have I been teleported 30 years ago to the 95 World Cup when Chester Williams was, the only black player in the Springbok team? So I kind of wrote, I wrote the whole thing on the basis of the whole transformation thing has moved on from just being about numbers. In the old days, in the 2000s, we had two black wingers. And unfortunately, the coaches of the day stuck to just two black wingers, sometimes turning a flyhalf into, sometimes turning a flyhalf into a wing, or anywhere but where it matters on the field. Your job is just to run. And what I really like is that it had moved on from you need to have X amount of black or white players. What you really like, what I like about Rassi's tenure is that what it's done is it's become more about the accessibility and off the pathway to the Springboks. So when you look at a guy like Sia growing up at a place where he grew up and growing up to be a Springbok captain, and when you look at Makazole Mapimpi growing up in the rural areas where he grew up and still being able to be a Springbok. So I felt if anyone could anyone in any corner of South Africa could feel that they could make it all the way to the Bok team, then that for me is transformation. You don't have to do numbers. But also by the same token, you have to be careful to not abuse that, to not abuse that goodwill where people say, what, it's no longer about the numbers. You've got, do what you've got in your heart. 14 white players to one in a Bulls team that is whose fans are becoming more and more, what's the word I'm looking for, cosmopolitan. Every time that I look
Sure.
at the grandstand at the Bulls, it's very cosmopolitan. They sing Ikwijo every now and
Very.
again. And I just
Yeah.
think that you almost owe those guys. You almost owe those guys some kind of like, hey, we see you. We're doing this for you too. When you go 14-1 split, it sounds a little bit too much like, we're still back in the days of Nas and them. And I'm not throwing shade at Nas. I'm just saying, when Nas obviously played, they would have played an all-white team. So that was my whole thing. And obviously, understandably, I got the requisite abuse because, I was seen to be race baiting, et cetera, et cetera. But it is something that we need to talk about, and it is something that we need to be careful about. A lot has gone into making rugby sort of, into this sort of the goodwill factor that rugby enjoys. A big part of it is a lot of those fans can see people that look like them playing and can be inspired by people that look like them. And unfortunately, I also happen to know that, once or twice, you got some players, that don't play. I know one or two of those stories, and they're not necessarily, somebody could say, oh, what if it's just our best team that we can play? This whole best team thing can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, because there can be a belief in South African rugby that, by being white, you are likelier to succeed because rugby supposedly is in your blood. And, by being black, you're kind of like a guest. You've got to sort of show something special. You almost got to be a Sasha, a Brian Habana, or a
Yeah.
Brayton Paul. Say, you've got to shoot the lights out just to be in the team. Whereas there can be an awful lot of mediocre. Mediocre is a terrible word. Average white players that can actually be in the team and enjoy the living without having to push too hard. That was the point I was trying to make. And obviously, typically, I mean, we don't have discussions like that in South Africa maturely. Typically, it just sort of all degenerated into insults about how useless and stupid I am, which actually some of it is true. I can be a bit stupid, but in this case, I don't necessarily think I was.
Yeah, no, it's an important one. And, the reason it's important is not, like you say, to stir up things that make people feel uncomfortable about the past. But I watch what is happening with SA cricket. The fact that they're still having the conversations rugby was having 10 years ago. And I don't want to go back there. The last thing you want is to give air time ultimately to the naysayers, to the detractors, to the ones who are going to say, well, look, it hasn't worked, or look, we are not transformed. And I absolutely agree with you on 2 points. One, you've got to give enough opportunity. Think of Jacques Callis, just to keep going with the cricket. We persisted until he became a great. And I think that sometimes you do need to do that with rugby players. And then obviously you don't want people to turn around and say, you see, and then we're back. I don't want to go back. So thanks for making us think. Thanks for taking the abuse on our behalves. But I'll leave the booze to the coaches on this thing, to our new feature. And we're going to be delving into every week from now on, the Simba. Very quickly, we're going to wrap up with the RC. But before we do, and I hope Paul and Jules who are listening and are going to forgive me, we did get a question about the latest Springbok alignment camp, and Rassie has named a group of 54 local and overseas players. It's a lot. It's just an alignment camp, so it doesn't mean anything particular of selection, but to see Joandro Augustus, going very well. Vincent Chituka and Togozo Makaza invited to their first camps. Are you surprised? Though Rassie has really opened up that selection, and at least for alignment, he'll want to play more than 50 guys again this year.
Look, the thing about alignment camps is, people might say, well, it's not the Bok camp proper. But if you don't make it into an alignment camp, I've never seen anyone not make an alignment camp and make any of the Springbok squad. So once you make that step, it means you being looked at, and that's all you need. And if you are being looked at, the really good thing is They bring you in, they analyze your game for you and with you. And then when they send you back with a to-do list in terms of the laundry list of what you need to work on. And so, if that doesn't inspire you, then, I have no idea what you're even doing in rugby. So I think it sounds like it's not important. It's just an alignment camp. They like saying that, but actually it is quite important, especially when it happens this close to the internationals. What are we, like, just over a month away from that first Barbarian game? And so I think that's very important. In terms of surprises, I must admit, I am surprised. I was going to write the story and ask about Joano Augustus, and so I am surprised. He's cracked the knot. It's a great thing that he's cracked the knot. He plays for Northampton Saints. They went to Leinster and put Leinster away at Leinster in the Champions Cup quarterfinal. Oh, sorry, semi-final, and now they're in the final. So and he played a critical part. I think in the third quarter of that game, he was immense, just carrying, being basically being trucky. And he has improved. That's the really cool thing about him. Maybe he didn't have repeat effort when he left, or maybe he wasn't, he didn't have endurance or whatever it was that you would have liked. But he's got all of those skills now. He's grown. And I always wondered about this guy. This guy, when he played under 20s, was the World Rugby under 20 Player of the Year. And then he just basically disappeared. And then he disappeared first in our system, and then he disappeared. He disappeared off overseas and sort of out of mind and out of sight. So I'm really excited that he's come back. I know that has been brought on by, Jasper Wiese missing out because he's currently injured. And so they're kind of almost looking for a like-for-like replacement in that you've got an explosive ball carrier, a hard hitter in the tackle. And then, even when you look at the fact that he's not really a factor in the lineouts, because Jasper is not much of a factor in the lineout, you've almost kind of like got that like-for-like replacement in terms of what you need. And the really cool thing about Truckee, like I said, is that he has evolved from the young guy that kind of disappear, in the system before sort of being convinced to go to Northampton Saints. So surprised, as always, especially so close to, so close to the first sort of few games of the box. But I'm excited by the fact that you've got these new faces. Of course, the more the merrier. You cannot pick great teams from no depth. So it'll be interesting to see these guys. If obviously they graduate to make the squad proper when Rassie finally announces it in June.
Yeah, and for anyone who didn't watch any Varsity Cup, maybe find some highlights and watch Makaza and how he went with UCT. He's joining the Cheetahs for the Currie Cup, and he was the varsity player of the tournament. And that you don't see, somebody going straight from Varsity Cup into a Springbok alignment camp and, already putting a hand up.
It has happened before. I forget the guy's name. He was a tight head prop he played for Picker, and then he then moved to the Pumas. Yes, I forget his name. This was either I think last year actually. So it has happened before where they kind of like, I mean, this is Rassie we're talking about. If you look at someone like if you look at somebody like Renzo Duplessis, Renzo wasn't playing. Renzo wasn't playing when he got called to the last alignment camp at the Lions.
Sure.
And then shame the Lions coach is kind of like sheepishly thought, oh geez, maybe we better play him. Like
wasn't Jaden Hendricks also sort of in and out of this of the squad?
It's one of those. What does Rassie see that we're not seeing? So it has happened before. But obviously it's a massive jump, and it's quite a weird thing to handle because, like you say, it doesn't guarantee making the box squad, but like there's such a fuss around it. You and me wanting to go have a look at clips. There are, family members, probably getting carried away and saying, well, he's in the squad proper. And I think he can manage his emotions, manage himself in terms of, listen, it's not what it looks like just yet. If I do well, things might work. But you know what? Edwin van der Merwe also plugged into the box squad, And actually, he's one of those guys that made it work for him. He worked so hard at Loftus when they were training that there was no question mark about whether he was going to start in that sort of one-off friendly test against Wales or not. So you can actually get into the setup almost via the back door and kind of like, force your way in. So it's happened before.
All right, we have to wrap up with VRC, but very quickly, and I really appreciate the messages. And don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe as well. And do share with your friends and anyone who you think might enjoy these kind of conversations and be part of our community. All in the game. Yes, love this thing. To say big congrats to SA's athletic teams in the recent World Relay Champs, building something special there. It was phenomenal. The men's 4x100, men's 4x400, women's 4x400, getting bronze, but breaking the record for the second time in one day. Well done, team. That was really phenomenal. I love that we've got all of these sprinters. When can we convert them to rugby players? And then Jono saying, X and Sim. No. Come on, Akani Simbine would be great. Okay. Also, we did see what happened to Wade van Niekerk. He broke down after playing a bit of touch rugby as well. So maybe not the greatest idea. John was saying, who's your next captain after Sia? And I love that he asked that question after we're talking about Troki, because I've got a little feeling that we're going to see Sia operating maybe at 8 a little bit, maybe not full time. Maybe Troki is there to add a little bit of impetus, a bit of pressure, push the guy from the back. But Sia is not going to play forever. Do you have any contenders?
Listen, even that PE vibranium that he seems to be made of, has got to run out of juice after a while. He just can't be that strong. Also, like, Sia's not a particularly big man. He just punches way above his weight. When you see him in person, you're like, you look at him, you're like, there's not much to the circ, But try, tell that to the guys he's run over on the field. In terms of captain, I know that these guys like them to be forwards. But personally, I would go a bit left field and just literally just look all the way forward. I would go Damian Willemse. He's grown up in the team. He's looking at a third World Cup. He'd still be within, he'd still be under 30 by the time they go. And, when you look back at how he carried himself, he was the baby in 2019 and kind of got that, got that medal because he got called back when Jesse Creel got injured or whatever it was. But, he was very instrumental to the last win because remember, he started at fullback in the final. And, of course, he's the guy that pulled the iconic sort of scrum signal. So it would be quite left field in terms of an idea. He's a guy that lives and breathes rugby. Apparently walks around with the laptop, to sort of study the game all the time. So he's very much obsessed. He's got his own personal trainer. He's got his own masseuse. He's got his own chef. He takes the game very seriously and he thinks very long and hard about the game. So maybe a guy like that, I think that might be, the way to go. It is left field, I understand. But I don't know. What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't have thought him, but now that you mention him, he also has there's a lot more depth to the man besides just the rugby. He's actually quite opinionated. I think he's quite a progressive thinker beyond the game of rugby as well. So I think that's a pretty good shout. The other person who I think is going to get opportunities to captain the team, but I don't think will be the full-time captain, at least not just yet, is Salman Murat. The Springbok management squad loves his leadership skills. Clearly, players react to him. I don't know if it's going to be the starting lock through most of his test matches or the ones that will follow. So I think the jury's still out as to who the long-term one is. And just because I'm a little bit extra, I'd love to see Ox because I think he's young enough. I think we'd have fun press conferences. I think there'd be cake for journos. And I think that the world would get something completely different. And he'd be around. He'd be at the next World Cup. He'd be a starter and is one of the best in the world in his position. But maybe that's just me being a little bit wild.
Dude, that is getting a bit ahead of yourself. Listen, last story about Damien being a deep thinker. The other story I heard was that he's one of those guys who also walks around with with an impossibly thick book, that he's reading. And I don't know if the guy that told me
I don't
that got
know.
it slightly wrong. I don't know if he got it wrong, but the guy who told me seemed to think that the book was Hitler's Mein Kampf. So yeah, deep thinker indeed.
Yeah, no, wait. That's a little bit unexpected. Look, I don't know. I don't know that they have any say, but I think the box would also be a little bit more fashionable as well. Because man, the man can dress to impress. Sim, let's take a quick look very quickly. Thanks in the game for that content for that message saying Sian Adi Survey is sort of in a similar situation, being at 7 and 8 and being managed carefully to the next World Cup. Yeah, I don't know if these guys are going to be at the next World Cup. I hate to say it, but we have to consider the possibility. But maybe it will be a Dwayne Vermeulen type situation where you're part of the squad, but maybe your role is a very different one. URC final round coming up this weekend. Quarterfinal places pretty much done and dusted. Bulls find themselves in second place on the log, so they'll feel, I think, very happy with the way their season has gone. It's a massive. Got to ask this. I always focus on the South African teams, but that jump between 1 and 2, Leinster and the Bulls. Just how good is this Leinster team? Yes, I know that they came unstuck in the Champions Cup, but gee whiz, that's a lot of points.
Listen, I was about to answer and say they're great as long as it's not sudden death. I'm sorry. I know Jacques Nina was there, and I know RG Snyman are there, but you know what? They're still an Irish team, and Ireland has a quarterfinal curse. So I'm sorry. As long as they're obviously great, as long as it doesn't, there's no such thing as it doesn't mean anything. But as long as it's not sudden death. Look, the main thing to look at this weekend is a couple of things. The first one is Leinster are hosting Glasgow, who are third, which, given Leinster's form in the league stages, would suggest that, and the fact that Leinster beats Glasgow 52-0 in the quarterfinals of the Champions Cup, would suggest that Leinster's going to win that game. If they do win that, that means the Bulls, who are already in second place, cannot be moved. Actually, it would take a lot to move the Bulls from second place. And they are playing the Dragons, who are literally the very last team on the table. But the thing to look at is, as things stand, the Stormers and the Sharks are fourth and fifth. The Sharks being fourth and the Stormers being fifth.
Yeah.
The Stormers stand to benefit a lot if they stay exactly where they are, instead of actually trying to move around. But what they need is for the Sharks to stay where they are, and the Sharks are playing the Scarlets, which is John Plumtree's son's team, Tane Plumtree.
Tane Plumtree.
And so if the Sharks win against Scarlet, then what you have is Glasgow dropping to fourth, assuming they lose to Leinster. And if that does happen, the poor Stormers suddenly have to travel to Scotstoun and Glasgow, which is exactly the same place where they lost the quarterfinals. So the Stormers, in a strange way, have kind of like, they need to stay where they are, but they also need the Sharks to stay where they are, so that they can rather go to Durban instead of Glasgow for their quarterfinal.
Yeah, and either way, they're going to travel. And if they do somehow manage to get through the quarterfinal, the semi-final is bound to be away from home anyway.
Yeah, they're going to come back. Well, they're probably going to stay out there anyway, or maybe suddenly have to come back home. Either way, that amount of trouble. You remember how it hurt the Bulls when they went to Leinster for their semi-final in 2022, and then they had to come down and play the Stormers in the final. And when it, at the business end of the game, they just didn't have, enough juice left in the tank to be able to sort of make a game of it, because partly they played their final in the semifinals. So it's going to be tricky if they do have to travel that much. But yeah, and what they really want is this is strange. What they really want is to lose to Cardiff, and then for somehow the Sharks to lose to what's this thing to lose to the
Scarlets.
Scarlets.
Yeah,
And then
not gonna happen.
and then then kind of sorted. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Well, we will. I mean, so that's confirmation then of those fixtures. Stormers against Cardiff. This is South African teams, obviously. Bulls against the Dragons at home. Sharks at home to Scarlets. And the Lions also have an opportunity to finish on a high there at home to the Ospreys, which I think is a match that they can win. Just are they motivated to? And I think I would take that as your pick of the weekend. If you're going to watch one match, that's not a South African one, Leinster, Glasgow Warriors, I think will inform a lot of what happens into the knockouts. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Jono, again, with your message, bumper weekend of URC, Go Stormers, Bulls and Sharks, rates this competition much harder than Super Rugby, which I absolutely...
Even Donald Boat.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. He's going to learn a little bit more about that. And in fact, it's going to be very interesting to see how those guys in Super Rugby Pacific go in the international season as well. Thank you once more to Butch James. Really great to catch up with him and see him and just pick a bit of his brain, especially around the fly-off situation. Sim, I know you've got work to do, so I'm going to let you go. Thank you for the comments. Don't forget to give us a like. Subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll be here. If you're wondering when, same time next week, 7 o'clock on That Rugby Union Show. Cheers, everyone. Good night.
Yeah.